Hello there everybody and welcome to another in-depth analysis of a Kings of War tournament and all my games therein. Now I'm just going to change the picture quickly just to make sure you can actually see anything. Sometimes with this screen share business it starts in pure blackness and we wouldn't want that, would we? So this tournament, Call of the Wild Wood, took place at Black Dragon Miniatures on Saturday. 2,000 points. All the usual tournament rules from the Clash of Kings pack, but tournaments at Black Dragon do have a bit of a unique twist on them. So, as you marvel at the opening image of my army here, I'll just run you through some of the rules. So there's a reroll token, which allows you to reroll one dice roll per game, as long as it's not the roll off for the first turn or anything like that. It has to be during your turn. And if it involves two dice rolls, for example, a nerve test involves two dice, then you have to reroll both of them. You can't just reroll one of them. Let's see what else we got. So there are no turn 7s as well. Black Dragon, that's a common thing to stop the day dragging on and running out of time at the end and overrunning, because I imagine the shop does have to close at some point. You can't keep all the staff there indefinitely. And those are the main things. So I'll go into my army. Actually, I'll tell you a bit about the tournament scoring first, because that's a big difference. So often with tournaments, you'll have the kind of the 20-0 system where you can have a maximum of 20 or a minimum of 0 points, where you'll start off with 5 for a loss, 10 for a draw, and 15 for a win. And then your score is modified by 5 points based on how well you performed. Some of them do it so it's based on the difference between the armies and how much you killed on each side, and then compare those numbers and then adjust your score accordingly. And some of them have it purely on how much you've killed, so how much you lose isn't a factor in that at all. So for these tournaments though, it's 5 points for a win, 3 for a draw, and 1 for a loss. And then the amount of stuff that you kill in the opposing army can modify your score by up to 5 upwards. So you're not really affected by how much you lose. So in effect, it does mean that you can actually lose a game and still get more points than your opponent out of the game. So it's very geared towards killy lists. Because if you win all your games, but only by the tiniest of margins and don't really kill things, all you do is successfully claim objectives and position your troops, then you're only going to get those basic 5 or 6 points. Whereas if you lose, you're starting off with 1 point, but if you kill almost everything, then you're going to get 5 points for the kills. So you could end up on 6 points. So you could actually score 6 points and your opponent get 5 when you've lost the game, which is interesting. So it does mean you have to take the meaning of the word loss and the meaning of win a little more loosely than you would do normally. So my list, let's go through it, shall we? It's goblins again, as you can see here, the lovely white snow bases, the orange masses. It's been a while since I've taken goblins to a tournament. So there's a few differences in my list from usual because I've added a couple of models lately. A few things that I've added that weren't in this list. I didn't put in any more beasts, which I do want to do in the future, but I looked back on the last goblin list I used in a tournament in which I did well, which was also at this location at Black Dragon Miniatures. And I've taken the strengths of that list, or what I perceive to be the strengths, and then added to that. So we have a Rabble Horde. It's the cheapest horde you can get pretty much, and that's mainly in there for scenario scoring purposes because it's on unit strength, of course, since Clash of Kings. So a horde is worth a lot and it's very, very cheap. Then we've got a Spitter Horde and a Spitter Regiment. This is mainly because I've just got that many models available and I wanted this to be quite a shooty list. So those are all the Spitters that I had. And the Horde, of course, is nice for scoring. Regiments aren't bad for that either. Then we've got 2 Troll Hordes, as usual, because that's the limited amount of Troll Hordes I can actually take. That's how many models I own until I buy some more. So 1 with the Dwarven Ale, 1 with the Brew of Courage, as usual. However, I don't think I'm going to stick with the Brew of Courage in future because I always forget I actually have it. So that's not a good one. Dwarven Ale I always seem to remember, but Brew of Courage, when the enemy is rolling on those nerve tests, I always forget that they actually have the Brew of Courage. So I'll think about that in the future. Fleabag Rider Sniffs, a regiment. They get in there above the regular Fleabag Riders because this wants to be a shooty list. And I want them sitting around, preferably on objectives, out of the action, just peppering people with shots. and if someone sends a unit after them, they can always just run away. Or if an opportunity for a nice flank or rear charge presents itself later in the game, then they can always take that, because they're not horrendous in combat. Then 2 War Trombones. This is double my usual War Trombonage, because, of course, I only actually have 1 War Trombone model. The other one is a ball with another goblin on the base, but the ball does have its mouth open in kind of a trombone shape, so it passes the War Trombone lookalike test. So 2 of those, 3 big rock throwers. 1 is the actual big rock thrower model. 1 is a goblin doom diver from really old Warhammer, and the other one is actually a sharp stick thrower representing a big rock thrower. I don't think anyone really minds, though. Everyone uses proxy stuff at these things. Then we've got 2 Flaggits. It's the usual Flaggit setup for me with the goblins, both on Fleabags, 1 with the Holy Hand Grenade, 1 with the Diadem of Dragonkind. They've served me well in the past, so I see no reason for that to change. It's very handy, the inspiring, and also being able to run around and lob shooting attacks at people, and then if I need to, I can use them and their incredible speed to chaff things up late in the game, and that's what they're for. Then we've got 2 Whizzes. I've mixed things up a bit with my Whizzes here, actually. I've got 2 as usual, 1 on a Fleabag and 1 on foot, because those are the models I own. The one on a Fleabag for this tournament, I've given him Wind Blast. They have Wind Blast 5 by default, Goblin Whizzes, when you take the spell, which does cost extra points. And then I've also given him the Zephyr Crown, which is the Wind Blast boosting item, which puts him up to Wind Blast 9, which is significant, because you can count on reliably pushing an enemy unit 4 inches then. And often that's enough. So if you come up against something that's, say, speed 7, some of the units that I would be most terrified of, something like a Stampede or some heavy cavalry, are about speed 7. If they want to get into range to charge, let's say, my trolls, but they don't want me to charge them, they're going to have to sit between 12 and 14 inches away. So if I just wind blast them back, on average, I'm definitely going to push them out of their charge range and keep them at bay a bit longer. So it means enemies will have to put themselves in my charge range or risk being blown away. Or what more commonly happens is it changes the way the enemy sets up their army, and they end up putting their units behind each other, which is something they may not have done otherwise. So it makes your opponent react to you, having all that wind blast ability. So I like that. It takes people out of their element a little bit. Then the second wizard has just got the Scarletmaw's Fernulian Amulet. That's all he's got, so that just boosts his Lightning Bolt to Lightning Bolt 5, which is pretty tasty for just a little whiz on foot, who's relatively cheap. With that item, he's only 70 points. So that's pretty good. Nice long-range attack there. Reliable. He's individual, so just blasting out those little lightning bolts in any direction. Put a couple of wounds on things. Then we've got Troll Bruiser with the Blade of Slashing, which is usually how I run him, because I find the Blade of Slashing is a really optimal item for him, because hitting on a 3+, usually you're probably going to get 1 miss out of that, I find, and then being able to reroll that, on average, it should convert it into a hit. And then with Crushing Strength 3, he's usually wounding on 2s anyway, so you're probably going to get reliably 4 wounds out of him with the Blade of Slashing on there. Then we've got a Mincer, because it's just nice and cheap, and it's just tasty. It can dish out some giant-like damage. Obviously not as survivable as a giant, and a giant as well. I'm noticing the top Goblin players don't often seem to take giants. They cost exactly the same points as a Troll Horde, and they do have some advantages over a Troll Horde, but I don't think it's enough because they don't have the same damage output, only having d6 plus 6 attacks. So on average, you're probably going to get about 9 attacks in a round. So you're not going to be doing that much damage. They can reliably put out a small amount of damage, though. It's just the extra special rules that make the giants interesting. They have the extra speed, obviously, and the likes of Brutal, Fury, and Strider. So it depends on the situation and the terrain. If you've got lots of annoying terrain that might hinder other models, then having a giant can be handy. But overall, he's not quite as good as the trolls. And if I had more trolls, the giant would be the first thing I would consider leaving out, probably. So that's my entire army. It's quite shooty. Not maximum shootiness. I've gone for a little bit of balance as well, because if you have nothing but shooty units and the enemy actually gets into you, then you are pretty toast, aren't you? So the things I don't want to come up against with this list, well, obviously it's a shooty list, so I don't want too much speed, because obviously that would negate my wind blast advantage as well. I want things that are around about between speed 6 and speed 8. If a whole army is speed 9 or 10, then wind blast isn't going to do me that much good at the end of the day. And a lot of my shooter units are just going to get pounced on in turn 2, probably, and get eaten. I do have some things in there to mitigate against speed. Obviously, with war trombones, any flyers that land nearby, they can't really outmaneuver the trombone, who can just turn around and blast them. And also individuals with shooting attacks are very nice to counter that. But if the whole army has a lot of speed and flying in it, then it can be a bit tricky. Also, anything with healing abilities or regen or good life leech, anything that's going to get wounds back, because my triple rock thrower is what I'm relying on to heavily damage units before they get to my lines. So any army that can just advance, soak up those 5 or so hits per turn, those 5 wounds maybe that on average I'll probably end up inflicting with rock lobbers. Anyone that can just take that and then heal it on the way in is going to be a bit of a nuisance. Any units that have, let's see, any units that can't be wavered are annoying as well, because obviously if you're dropping a rock on someone, it's not going to do a vast amount of damage. It's going to do reliable damage if it hits, but it's not a huge amount. So you're probably looking to just do enough to waver, let's say, a unit of heavy cavalry. If their waver point is something like 15, you could quite conceivably get them wavered on the way in with rock lobbers. If you're looking at things with higher nerve than that, or things that can't be wavered, I'm thinking things like dwarf berserkers here. And also they have low defense, so you're wasting all that piercing that you've paid for with the rock lobbers if you're just shooting at things with really, really feeble defense. So I would like to see, against me, I would like to line up against a wall of height 2 stuff and high defense, but not incredible nerve. So really I want to play against ogres non-stop throughout this tournament, because that means I can shoot over my own height 1 troops, because the rock lobbers won't be affected by cover. And the high defense is going to be negated by the piercing on the rock lobbers, and the low nerve means that I should be able to have a chance at wavering them with 1 or 2 hits, which is what I want to do. And then they'll be heavily damaged. I don't think ogres have that much access to healing either, do they? So once they get halfway across the table, I'll then be able to pounce on them, and I've got my other shooting attacks that will finish them off, the little annoying stuff, the trombones and the lightning bolts and the spitter units. So that was a very long analysis of my list there. We've got Martin the Warrior in the chat there. So hello to you. Anyone else who's watching this live, feel free to comment if you've got any tactical observations. So, game number 1. And this is, let's see, we've got the scenarios on this official sheet here from the tournament. Scenario 1 was push, which is, of course, where you're attempting to take tokens into the opposing half of the table and have them in your possession at the end of the game. So for every token you own, it'll be worth 1 point, and for every token you have in the enemy half, it'll be worth 2 points. So you can see there's a token right in the middle of the table there. Hopefully you can see that on the picture. And then we also have 2 tokens that we put on our own units, which we're going to try to reach the other side of the table with. And I'm against the herd. Now, before the tournament, I knew I was going to be up against the herd because the pairings were announced. And I was slightly concerned, depending what kind of list showed up. I was fully prepared to face a couple of stampedes and wind blast them into oblivion, and then avoid having to take the really dangerous hit from them, which is seriously mitigated against if you hit them first. So a lot of stampede I was prepared for. The list I actually came up against, though, here was a lot faster than I was hoping for. There was an awful lot of speed, 8, 9, and 10 stuff in here. There were beast packs, there were lichens, and there were also some Elohai allies as well. There was a lichen alpha as well, but we'll get to that in a second when I go through the opposing list. You can see the terrain also. One interesting thing about this tournament, there were actually hills in nearly all the deployment zones, which is a nice change, because normally at a tournament you don't have hills in any of the deployment zones, and pretty much every table had a hill in each deployment zone here, which for the tournament when I just happened to show up with 3 rock lobbers is very, very handy indeed. So let's have a look. Here's the opposing army here. Now, this is a really handy thing that this guy does. He's got the little labels on the back of the unit to show you what items they have. So that guy's obviously got the, I think it's the Blade of the Beast Slayer it's called. And I think that is his Lycan Alpha, who is pretty much like Lycanis for the undead. Then he's got beasts behind there, and there's some Elohai, a horde of Elohai as allies. So there's a lot of speed instantly on this side, and it doesn't get much slower over here. So he's got some eagles. You can see he's got a lot of toy dinosaurs in here, by the way. I think they're pretty cool. Great eagles, I think they are, represented by some pterodactyls there. He's got, these are the slowest unit. These are guardians or something like that, and they have a healing brew. Then he's got 2 units of lichens, which are very, very similar to werewolves. Then he's got some more beasts back there. He's got the Ur-Alohi, which is the Alohi hero, which it's interesting that he hasn't matched that up on the same side of the table as the other Alohi and put the Lichen Alpha on the same side as the Lichens. But it makes sense because he wants to spread out his flying abilities, I would imagine. And then he's got a little guy here. I'm not sure what that is. That'll just be a shaman or something like that. And I think he's got another one down there. Or he's got, that might be a standard bearer there with the loot, it looks like it says. So yeah, this is very handy. He's got an item as well, but I can't really read it from that position there. This one, you can see, has got the Brew of Strength. And what does the other one have? Can I read it from this angle? Maybe not, but we'll see. I'm sure it's something very, very tasty, though. So he was very well prepared. And he's got these little templates as well that he puts down to show where the unit's going to move to before he actually picks up the model, which is very, very handy because you can have absolute certainty that you haven't put the unit back in the wrong position then. So that's a nice touch. I might consider doing that, actually. Then, on my lines here, you can see I've got this bit of difficult terrain on this side of the table, which isn't going to factor in too much because it's the push scenario, so I imagine we're both going to be moving forwards at least somewhat. Although I'm not that eager to move, because if he has to walk towards me, I'm going to be able to shoot him. And then in the last few turns, I'm hoping to move forwards. So I've got my giant all the way on this flank. Sometimes the deployment doesn't look particularly uniform, but I've got a lot of drops, so I was able to see where he put most of his stuff first and then deploy other things later. So, for example, I may have put down this Rabble unit, which actually have spears, but just ignore those. And then maybe I deployed the giant right at the end, thinking I needed some more meat on this side. So that's likely what happened. And I've got the rock thrower behind a height 1 unit, because he's got a lot of height 2 stuff ahead of me. So I'm not worried about shooting over my own guys there, because, of course, rock lobbers aren't affected by cover. Then I've got the Whiz with the Wind Blast right there, because I'm thinking that the Lichens are going to be a prime target for that. I think they're speed 9. So pushing them away out of charge range will be handy, because if they come too close, then, of course, the Giant would be able to charge them. They're not slow enough for it to be an ideal target for Wind Blast, but I think also the Lightning Bolt from him is going to be useful as well, firing out that little crevice there. We've got a War Trombone behind this Spitter Regiment. Then we've got one of the Flaggits. The one with the little bird on his back has the Diadem of Dragonkind. Troll Bruiser there, along with one of the units of Trolls and the Mincer in the middle, so I can decide which side the Mincer is going to go to after. Because you can see this big piece of impassable terrain here, so the Mincer's just biding his time, deciding which way he needs to go based on how heavily he commits forces to this side. Because all his stuff is so fast, he's going to have the option to redeploy. Martin the Warrior says, where is the giant model from? Looks like Reaper. Yes, it is. Reaper Bones. It's a Frost Giant King, that one. Then I've got my Spitter Horde on the hill, and they've got both of my push tokens, which you might think it's odd putting it on a missile unit, but he's got nothing deployed in the center of the table at the moment. So we'll see, because like I said, he does have the option to redeploy most of his army quickly because they're so fast. But I've got a Wizard back there as well with his 5 Lightning Bolt, and I've got another Rock Lobber there. More Trolls on this side for some meat. And this one, this Flaggit, has the Holy Hand Grenade. And right in this corner, we've got the final Rock Thrower. This one is in the woods, so I'm going to be able to shoot out. And if he wants to come and get me, it's going to be slightly more annoying for him. Then I've got the Fleabag Sniffs there as well, and a War Trombone, because he's got some flyers on this side. So I want the Trombone around to act as a bit of a deterrent, because if they really want to charge in and attack the Sniffs, then, well, they're the same speed as the Sniffs for a start, so they're going to have to put themselves within range to either be charged or shot by the Sniffs. And then if they do make it in all the way down here, the Trombone will hopefully be able to do some damage to them. Turn 1. So I get the first turn. And at this tournament, generally, I like to go second if I'm playing as an army that doesn't have much shooting, because it gives you a bit of a scenario advantage, being able to leap on objectives and maybe push people off objectives in the final turn. But because I've got so much shooting, and I think I'm going to be quite reliant on these 3 Rock Lobbers, then I decided I was going to go first in most circumstances, unless the way the deployment lines up, it looks as though I've got no line of sight. So going first, and the advance is on. Not moving into the charge range of any of his flying units, though, at this stage, because I'm quite happy to be shooting him. So just the trolls and the Mincer have moved up a bit. Most things have stayed back slightly, at least. And on this side, you can see I've moved up the spitters off the hill, so that's going to free up the line of sight there for the rock thrower and the whiz up there as well, because them being on the hill and these guys being on the ground is going to be a good enough height difference, I would say, there. And of course, the rock lobber are not affected by cover anyway. So he's got nothing in the middle, so I feel quite confident advancing into the middle. And hopefully that's going to draw some of his stuff into the center, because I think particularly my left flank isn't the most protected. So I would like his stuff over there to come into the middle, ideally, where I've got a bit more meat to deal with it. Over on this side, I haven't moved much at all. I've sent this guy over, this Flaggit, over to the left to provide some inspiring on that side, and also to help cover the threat of the Elohai unit that are there. So I'd be able to drop more annoying shooting attacks on them should they get through. Dave Dog says, what is this hordes? If you mean what is this, comma, hordes, as in the game hordes, then no. But there are hordes, for example, hordes of trolls, if that's what you're talking about. So, Rocklobber, turn 1. Let's find out what kind of game they're going to have, what kind of day I'm going to have with the rock lobbers. What does it do, turn 1? What does this one do as well, turn 1? Look at that. 11 damage onto those guardians. And those are the ones carrying both of his push tokens, by the way, and they become wavered instantly in turn 1 from 2 direct hits with the rock lobbers. So, on average, one of them should be hitting per turn. So having 2 hit in 1 turn is always nice. So over the course of the game, I would hope to get at least a few hits. So very good start for them. They do have Healing Brew, but that's not going to get back too many of those wounds. He doesn't have many other sources of healing that I can recall in his army, if any. I think the Lycans may have regen, but of course I'm not targeting them yet. And does the other rock lobber hit? Yes, it does. It does 6 damage to the Elohai. So all 3 rock lobbers hit in turn 1. So I'm feeling very good about them at this stage. They're pretty much worth their inclusion for this game already, just with those 3 hits. Elohai I don't think can be wavered, though. But still, they're fragile now, because Elohai, I think that they're about nerve 17, I think, with no waiver value. So putting 6 or 7 damage on them early on is going to make them hesitant to go into combat. Because normally, if they were to charge a unit of trolls, let's say, trolls aren't going to kill the Elohai probably in one go, unless they got really, really lucky. However, once the unit's already got 6 damage on them, they have to actually consider that trolls could very feasibly kill them in 1 round of combat now. So that totally changes their role on the battlefield. So if you don't have the ability to get those wounds back, because I think the your Elohai has heal, which he can use on these, but he's on totally the opposite side of the table. So downside to the split deployment I was talking about there. And what do my spitters do? Well, it looks like they contributed to that, actually. Or did they? Oh, no, but actually I was just taking pictures of the tokens. Yeah, they didn't shoot. There was nothing in range for them in the first turn. So it was just showing that they have the tokens in there, and those guys have the tokens. So we both chose to put our tokens on the same unit. 2 tokens on each. And on his turn, you can see immediately that he's not fancying this flank too much. He doesn't want to get shot because I've got the Sniffs down there. I've got the War Trombone. I've got a Flaggit with a grenade. And there's also the rock thrower down there. So he's getting out of sight of that rock thrower, I think, with the Elohai, because he really does not want to get shot and take more wounds from it. Because another direct hit with a rock, and they're going to be in even more serious trouble. They're already looking a little bit dicey. They can still inflict damage at this stage, but they won't stand up to a counterattack very well at that level of health. So on the other side, he sent the Lycans with the Brew of Strength into these woods. He's got the Eagles behind them. Those guys couldn't do much because they're wavered, of course, and he's got some characters around there. He's moved those beasts behind. Like I said, he's repositioning lots of stuff to the center, because that's probably because I've got my tokens there, and I've got lots and lots of meat on my right flank, which he wants to divert away from. And you can see that they use their Brew of Healing here to get some of those wounds back. I think it looks like they got 2 there. And look, he's not going over this hill at all. He's staying off the hill with those lichens, and he's just pushing towards the center. So he doesn't want to face this wall of combat meat. He just wants to get into the middle and maybe leave the likes of my giant out the game, because all his units, apart from the Guardians, are faster. So he's going to be able to kind of dance around a bit, he's hoping. And I'm kind of not too disappointed he's doing that, because the more he moves sideways and not forwards, the more chance I'm going to get to shoot him. Turn 2. So I've advanced. I'm a bit more bold with the advance now, because I'm not worried about being in charge range of his eagles one bit. And a lot of his other units weren't looking in this direction. For example, the lichens stayed out of their charge arc for the most part, I think. And the giant just moved straight up, and then they're all going to be slowly arcing their way around into the center at some point. And what does the rock thrower do on this turn? Well, let's see. And this one as well. What do they do? Oh, look at that. They both hit the lichens in the woods, because, of course, cover doesn't help at all. So there's another 11 damage dished out from 2 rock throwers in one go. I'm going to alternate calling them rock lobbers and rock throwers, because that's just how people know them. So, no cover for them because they're rock throwers, and damage dished out. That's 5 hits out of 5 so far. Does the other one hit, though, this turn? Well, there's no picture of it, so I'm assuming it missed. But 5 hits out of 6 in the first 2 turns is pretty insane, and that's really crippled 2 of his really hard-hitting units there. Okay, now we've got the wizard. This is the Wind Blast guy, but I think he just uses his lightning bolt this turn. And he actually used it to put 1 point of damage onto these guardians and waver them again. So keeping them wavered, and they've already used their healing brew, so they're not getting any healthier, and they're still stuck there with his push tokens. That's 2 tokens that are just stuck in his half at this stage. And look at this. You may remember he had I think they're called a beast pack he had there. They are dead. Fleabag Sniffs were down here, and of course the Holy Hand Grenade as well was thrown at them. So they just died in one round of shooting. Toast. No inspiring over here. Let's see, Bazooka J Rambo's popped up in the chat. Hello there. Next image, you can see that this is obviously his movement. Now the dice that are down here, he was positioning those around to mark out where my charge ranges were, because he wanted to keep most of his units outside the charge range of anything he felt was a threat. So a few things he's left open. He's left the flank of this beast pack exposed to the trolls there, which he's not too concerned about, obviously, because he's just gone right in there. And the wounded lichens have gone straight forward, but because they're already on 10 damage, it looks like they only regen 1. They are going to get shot a lot. And then these lichens have moved into the woods now, which will protect them from anything that isn't a rock lobber. He's also flown the Alohi down here, and the eagles are behind as well. These Alohi are staying out of sight of my rock thrower in that corner. So I think that's their only objective at the moment. They're now within range to charge something next turn as well. Turn 3. So, well, what does this unit do? I've taken a picture of them. They must have done something useful. Look at that. 1 wound on the lichens, and they get wavered just from that. And the reason they've moved out of the woods, I think I wind blasted them as well. So I put 1 wound on them with the shooting from this unit, and then wind blasted them with the wizard. And then at the end of the phase, rolled a double 6. You can see the nice ulti bash 4 dice there, which I use for my nerve rolls now until something more tasty comes along. So nice bit of luck there, wavering them on a double 6. And this has been a very good dice rolling game so far for me. Here we go, a rock lobber picture. That means it's done something. What did it hit? In fact, 2 of them, what did they do? Oh, look at that. They wavered the eagles. So look at that. 8 damage. Tasty. Wavered eagles means eagles that aren't going to be charging. And look at that. Also, that unit of guardians was deleted as well. I can't remember exactly what hit each thing, but it looks like 2 rock lobbers probably hit that. And maybe the other one hit the guardians. So they're dead, and they've dropped their push tokens there. So it's not looking good at all for him. You can see that unit of beasts there have taken 1 damage. They must have been shot by something, probably a lightning bolt. And it looks like it's probably his turn at this stage. I think I actually threw a grenade at them, and it may well have missed. You can see his corpse pile in the top corner there that's just being built up. And the trees, those are just the trees that have been plucked off the bases, so models can move through the woods. Very well designed forests there with the trees that come off. I've turned the Fleabag Sniffs to face this way because there's no threat coming down this side at all now, so I can concentrate on moving them towards the centre. And there's this big swing round motion. It's going to take quite a while because his units are so fast, and my giant may not even see action. But of course, I've got these 2 units here that can go and try and claim those push tokens up at the top if there's no one for them to fight. And look at this. He double charges the Elohai and the Your Elohai into my push token carrying unit of Spitters. But he's probably not going to kill them in one go. He'd have to roll quite well to do that. And then he also sends his Lycan Alpha into the trolls there. Yep. So you can see he does a fair bit of damage to that unit, but not enough to even waver them yet. And the trolls are just chilling there. So what this has left him open to is quite nasty, because if my Spitters decide to countercharge the Your Elohai, they will slide down there, meaning that my trolls can do the old corkscrew charge, where they pivot on the spot and charge into the flank of these Elohai here, which is exactly what I'm going to do. You can see the Mincer's gone up there as well. I'm not sure if that's fighting anything right now. Turn 4. So look at that. Mincer goes into the Eagles, and it does damage, but I double won them, and that was after I'd already failed to remove them as well. I used my reroll token because I thought, well, I sometimes hold on to them a bit too long, these reroll tokens. I might as well use it now. And I rolled a double 1 after cashing in the token, so what a waste. So at least they're not going to be able to fly, but they will be able to fight the Mincer, which he's not really scared of. But it's annoying wasting the token like that. Then, you can see that my trolls did kill the Elohai that were there with the flank charge, and now they've turned back to face the Lycan Alpha. And it doesn't look like these guys did any damage to the Your Elohai when they charged him. Countercharge. The War Trombone up here moved into position because he had a little Shaman or Standard Bearer running around here that was flamed. What does the Rock Lobber hit? Look at that, it just deletes something. I'm going to assume, is that the other unit of Lycans? Were they still alive last we saw? Let's see. Yes, it looks like they were still there. So I believe I kill them with the Rock Lobber. Finish them off. Wow. And you can see how I was able to wind blast them earlier by positioning the wizard up on that hill there, looking in this direction. Let's see, has anyone else popped up in the chat? Not yet, the people chatting away there. Dave Dog says, here in Madrid, Kings of War is being played competitively during the Freaky War Games tournaments of September. If that is the name of it, that's an interesting name. Okay, so you can see I've got tons of stuff left. He's barely killed anything, and he's running out of models here. So he's still got the Lycan Alpha, which is just being pelted with shooting attacks here from the Sniffs and the Holy Hand Grenade dude there. In the middle now, he does actually kill my Spitter Horde there with the Your Elohai. He was able to finish them off, and his Lycan Alpha made it up onto the hill to kill my Rock Thrower. So he's got these 2 monstrous characters here running around, a large infantry, so they can carry tokens. You can see that his Standard Bearer or Shaman or whatever that is has wavered my War Trombone, with only doing 1 damage. But being wavered or just taking damage doesn't really make a difference to that thing, because it's still not going to be able to shoot. So those guys are dead, so I'm not holding tokens at the moment, but he's running out of models, so I'm hopefully going to be able to take him out. The Mincer. It looks like they've gone into the Mincer now as well, but they're not going to do anything. And this guy goes into the flank of those trolls and puts 1 wound on them. You can see my whole battle line is swinging round, but there's nobody to fight at the moment. All those units on this side are being wasted. Turn 5. So I positioned everything to strike at this dude. So he's carrying tokens, which means that he can't fly anymore. And it slowed him down to speed 5. So I know he's not going to fly over me, so I've positioned my trolls to look at him, so that wherever he does, whoever he decides to attack, he's going to get hit by something. If he were to charge the old Trombone, then he's going to get hit by these trolls, and these guys are there as well to help out. So we'll see. And I think also, unless he maybe overran after killing it, then he would be stuck fighting these guys as well. This dude, this Lycan Alpha, is a nuisance, so I'm going to position lots of shooting attacks to go after him. Then you can see the Mincer has killed the Eagles and then turned around to face the action here. The Bruiser has put 3 damage onto that character. That's the guy with the loot, as you can see there. Very handy. And look, you can see those hands. He's surveying the battlefield now because he's only got, let's see, 2. Does he have another model left anywhere? Yes, 1 up there fighting the Bruiser. So he's down to 3 models, and I've only lost a couple of units now. So that my giant has gone up there and picked up the 2 push tokens that he dropped, and the other one is in the center waiting for me to pick it up. So the Mincer is going to be able to go and get that, most likely. Okay, so he decides to charge the Trombone, and he's charged this guy into the flank of the trolls, but he's not going to be able to kill them. Turn 6. So, look at this. Triple charge into the Yorelohai. 2 troll hordes and the Spitter Regiment went in behind just to add some more pain. And let's see how much damage have I done here. 7, 10, 11. But then I rolled 3 on the nerve. So it looks like I've it's a horrendously bad roll on the damage and then also on the nerve, which means I'm not able to steal those tokens off him. So it's looking a little bit dicey, perhaps. I do manage to kill the Lycan Alpha with all my shooting attacks, though. I think I may have wavered that last turn. Let me just check. Yeah, there we go. I wavered it with my shooting attacks on the previous turn, and then this time I did finish him off. Now here you can see I moved the Mincer to collect the push token in the center there. Now I could have used the Troll Bruiser for that, because I think I may have forgotten the Troll Bruiser is nimble, so he would have been able to turn and make it onto that thing. But I'm not sure I remembered that at the time. But the Mincer being attacked by this guy, I felt confident with its front-facing defense 6 on the front. I thought the Mincer will be able to survive that. And you'll also notice that this Flaggit here has been positioned just over 6 inches away from the Mincer because I'm a fool. And I could have given it Inspiring. But look at that, he only does 2 damage to it, but then he rolls 9 on the nerve test, which is exactly what he needs, so he kills it. So that's just dropped in the final turn of the game. So that means it's going to be 2 tokens each in the opponent's half. So it's going to be technically a draw in the scenario, even though he's only got 2 models left, and I've only lost about 3 units out of 18. I mean, look at that battlefield. I've still got all my trolls, the Bruiser, the Giant, the Rabble, Fleabags, and yeah, so technically a scenario draw. However, the way the scoring works in this tournament is mostly about killing. So let's see, I've got it marked down here. I lost 285 points, and he lost almost everything. I think he's only got about 200 points left, something like that. So it was enough to get me maximum points, I believe, which means that that's 5 plus the 3 for it technically being a draw, because it's a combination of just silly mistakes and silly dice rolls in the last turn. So the silly mistake of using the Mincer to collect that instead of the Bruiser, who has much higher nerve, and forgetting that the Bruiser was nimble, which meant he would have been able to turn around and collect it. It's just overlooking that fact, and also leaving this guy about 1/4 of an inch away from the range to inspire the Mincer as well was also a blunder. But then the dice rolls do come back to bite me then. That dice roll being big, this dice roll on him being tiny. So wow. So that means I end with 8 points. The maximum would have been 10 if I'd got the win, which might not be too bad, because that might mean that I can avoid the absolute killer players on the top tables for at least a round. And my opponent only got about 2 points, I think. So it goes down as a scenario draw, but I think for all other purposes, it's pretty much a win, really. So I'm very pleased with the way the list is going at this stage. The Rock Lobbers, especially in this game, performed very, very well. And there's just a picture to show you that Rock Lobber's still alive as well. And this was a little gift from my opponent as well. A little trophy for massacring his army so splendidly. Okay, game 2. Now, this is the pillage scenario, where there are various tokens around the middle of the table, and you want to be near them at the end of the game. So I've got 18 drops, but a lot of them are individuals and war machines. So a lot of them aren't going to be able to actually affect those. So what do I want to come up against in a scenario like this? I want to see an army that just has lots of elite troops and not much else. So it can't afford to sit around on the objectives. It has to be putting them into the fight where they're not wasted, which will allow me to hopefully win the scenario, whether or not I win the fight. And also, what would I like to face with my rock lobbers? Well, I would like to face heavy cavalry that aren't super fast, don't have obscene nerve, so that I could maybe waver them early on and wind blast them backwards as well and keep them out of my charge range. And what do I come up against? I come up against the Varangur, who are known for not having very many units. So I'm quite pleased. We've got a token there. You can see them all, the little wooden tokens down the middle. There, and there. So there's 5 of them. And if he were to try and sit a unit near each of those tokens, he wouldn't have anyone left to fight with. So he's going to have to focus on trying to kill me, definitely. Whereas I have a few units that are more expendable, that can just sit around on tokens all day. For example, over in the corner there, you can see the Fleabag Sniffs. If I can get them to just sit on that and just shoot from that position and stay there the whole game, that's fine by me. So let's see what we've got. There's also hills in the deployment zone again. We decided this hill was just going to be all one level. So this bit of the hill isn't even higher. We decided that obviously before we chose sides, and that's why I've positioned rock lobbers at the back of it, because that's not a blockage. It's all just the same height for ease. So he's got, now, the Varangur units. I believe the knights are called, they may well be the, you know what, in fact, I'm going to get the rule book right now so I can be absolutely sure. So I'm just going to wander across the room and grab the books. And here we go. So let's see the forces, because I want to get the names of units at least correct. Sometimes got the Uncharted Empires book here, the Varangur. Now I'm not sure these. I don't think they're the Sons of Korgan. I think they are actually the Direfang Riders, which are large cavalry. So they have a lot of attacks, but they're only defense 5, and their nerve isn't obscenely high considering how much they cost. So they are a great target for the rock throwers, because I'll be wounding them on 2s. So defense 5 is really the ideal that you want to be shooting at. And the nerve, I could easily see myself wavering them with a couple of hits. And they're only speed 6 as well, which means that if they want to charge me, they're going to have to come to within range of the trolls. I think one of them does have extra speed, possibly. One of them may have the Brew of Haste. And he's got, I think they're, for the Varangur, I think they're called Tundra Wolves, aren't they? I suppose I could just check the book right here since I've got it. Let's see, yeah, they are. Tundra Wolves, so speed 9. So they're going to be a bit of an annoyance, but I've got enough small shooting attacks like lightning bolts that I think I should be able to deal with them. Then he's got a standard bearer, whatever that's called. It might be a Scarl, something like that. Again, I've got the book right here, so I could just check. Let's see. I'm slowly learning the names of all these units, so I can be impressed with myself. Let's see. Am I correct? Is it a Scald? Yeah, I think it is. So there's him. Over on this side, that's probably another one, except that one's mounted. Then he's got 2 units of the Fallen, which are a very, very tasty unit indeed. A lot of people think they're among the best units in the game. They're similar to werewolves, except probably better. Let's tell you why they're better, actually. Let's get them up in the old rule book here. Why do people think they are so amazing? Okay, speed 8. They're slightly slower than werewolves. They have their height 1, and they have Iron Resolve and Pathfinder. So those are some abilities that werewolves maybe would like to have. Being height 1 means that it's easier to hide them a bit. Pathfinder, very, very handy as well. But nerve, again, 16, 18. So all his big 4 fighting units have nerve 16, 18, which means they can all be wavered, and 1 or 2 good rock lobber hits and lightning bolt combos maybe can waver them or even take them out. So these are the kind of units I wanted to face with my list. Then some things I maybe don't want to face so much. He's got Herger and a king on Chimera. So 2 flying, annoying things that are going to potentially be a nuisance. Nothing on the other flank, though. Then, with my deployment, I've got 1 rock lobber in this corner, with my 2 shooter units here, one behind the other. I think I just ran out of space when I was deploying in the end, really, because I was obviously wanting to spread out because there's lots of tokens all over the place, and then I didn't have a good spot to stick these guys in, so I just put them behind the other shooter unit, or I may have put them in front because I didn't have a good space for them. Then we've got some trolls here. The Wiz with Wind Blast, who I want to Wind Blast back these guys here. I know. These guys, because some of them have the Brew of Haste, which puts them at faster than trolls. So that speed 7 unit would be ideal target for Wind Blast, because if they want to come within range of the trolls, I'll charge them. If they want to sit just outside my range and just within theirs, I'll blast them away. And if they put something behind them, that means it's not charging me anytime soon, unless it's something really fast. Then we've got the Giant, and we've got the Flaggit right there. Then around this hill, we've got trolls and the Bruiser. Mincer behind them as backup, the Trombones at the back here to provide support against the flyer onslaught that's going to come in. 2 rock lobbers on the hill, Wiz on the hill because he won't affect line of sight for anything. And then we've got the Rabble Horde there just to be an annoyance to the flyers that are over there. And also I could move them forward onto some of the objectives around that point. The Sniff's just down there. I'm hoping that he's not even going to go after them. It might be a waste of his time chasing them. They're just going to sit on an objective and then shoot away for the whole game, hopefully. And first turn, and I get the first turn victory roll again. So that means I'm going to be going first, which is exactly what I want with this list. So, just putting these rule books down again, somewhere safe where they're not going to get mangled, surrounded by miniature pieces everywhere. Okay, so here we go. Turn 1, move up the Sniffs. I'm not sure whether I had a target for them in the first turn. Probably not. And you can see there's a measurement going on from my opponent there. He's keeping out of my charge range, probably. And here's how I've positioned all my stuff. I've moved up with some of it on this flank, but where his flyers are, I've stayed back with more of my units. The Trombones aren't really advancing because they are obviously going to be required when the flying units pop in here, probably to kill my rock throwers. Over on that side, I've put the Wiz further forward, because I was probably thinking about wind blasting someone. Then, oh, look at this. It's a picture of a rock lobber. That means it's hit in turn 1 again. And look at that. 1 rock lobber does 8 damage to the Diafang. I think that's what they are. And there we go. Wavered them instantly in turn 1. Wow, wow. So another great start for the rock lobbers. But it looks like only 1 of them hit, though. But I did hit with some other shooting, which is why the Fallen have taken 6 damage and the Tundra Wolves have taken 2. So those are presumably from various lightning bolts and other shooty-based attacks. A rock clobber may well have done that damage, actually. I just didn't take a picture of it to signify that. And you can see how he's positioned them to protect that unit there. And knowing full well that I can't really afford them to just charge whatever they want, and I would like to take them out before they get to me. So I would like very much the Giant to kill them, but then he's going to get countercharged in all directions. So if I want the Giant to charge into them, then I'm going to have to maneuver all the other units to prevent the furious rage of a follow-up charge from everything else. Let's see, is that unit there that became wavered, I think? Or is it? Let's see. Yes, I think it was. Let's see. Right, next. Okay, so you can see that he's positioned his Tundra Wolves in front of the Fallen there. That's not going to make a difference for them because they're nimble, so they'll be able to get around there quite easily. And then the 2 flying dudes there, Herger and the King on Chimera. And he's put his Standard Bearer, or Skald, behind the 2 units of Fallen, so that I probably wouldn't be able to wind blast them backwards if I move my wizard over here and try to blast them away. So probably a good move against wind blast there, although he's not really in prime position to target them. Turn 2. So he had a very short turn. You can see that I've turned this unit inwards, assuming that he's going to charge his flyers into my war machines, and then I'm hopefully going to be able to charge them with this unit. The trolls have moved up, making sure that their flanks are not exposed to anything. The Mincer just sitting there waiting to strike. Trombone's also just waiting, because I know there's going to be a big flying attack into this area soon. Over on this side, okay, check this out. So the giant kills the Tundra Wolves, and then I put the Windblast Wizard in that position there, blasted the Direfang Riders that way, and positioned him in front of that unit, so that if they want to charge him, they will then align. Well, he would align, but they're already kind of parallel to each other, so they would slide along, and then any overrun would not take them into the giant by my calculations. So I think that's how we worked it out at the time. So yeah, it looks a bit weird from this angle. It looks a bit questionable, but I think from the gaming table we did work out that with him positioned there, then they wouldn't be able to overrun into the giant. And they're not nimble or anything, so they would take more than a single pivot to try and charge into him, so they won't be able to do it, which is what I want. I'm sacrificing the wizard. Really, when you're doing that with a goblin, they should have to take a yellow-bellied roll, really, shouldn't they? When you're just sacrificing them, throwing down their life to protect something else. There should be some kind of roll there. It would be difficult to implement that, though, because what constitutes suicide and what doesn't. You'll notice that that unit actually disappeared after I wind blasted them. That is because, boom, rock to the face, they're dead. Wow, wow, 2 rocks, 2 direct hits, and that unit is toast. I may have also thrown a lightning bolt or something at them as well, and maybe shot at them with these guys. So they're gone. The giant there, killing the Tundra Wolves. Over here, these Tundra Wolves become wavered, taking 5 damage as a result of the shooting I have over here. And those fallen are up to 7 damage now, so it looks like they've taken a bit more. His 2 flyers poised to strike. And there, look at this. So, Herger straight into the rock lobber. He's obviously terrified after my successful rolls with those war machines, so he's going to try and kill one of them now. The King on Chimera decides to not go for the battery, though, and decides to combo charge with a unit of Fallen into my Troll Horde. This is the Troll Horde with the Dwarven Ale, so if they only become wavered, I might be able to countercharge here. And he positions this guy. I think he really just wants to inspire all this stuff around here. He's not too concerned about this dude's safety. And the other Fallen couldn't charge anything, so they've just positioned themselves here facing the giant so they won't get flank charged. So he's almost inviting the giant to charge them, really. You can see from that angle that the giant is probably going to take that charge because it's a very tempting proposition. And also he's going to just kill that wizard, obviously. But I don't think he's actually moved it in yet, or he hasn't slid them along correctly yet. So Herger obviously kills that Rocklobber, 1 down. And the combo charge of the Fallen and the King on Chimera does actually kill those trolls, even with the Troll Bruiser's inspiring presence nearby. And he's not able to do much repositioning with them because they're so tightly packed there. So the Bruiser now has a flank charge on that unit of Fallen. Turn 3. So yep, I take that flank charge with the Bruiser and the giant in the front, 9 damage and a waver. So no countercharging for them. I managed to waver Herger as well with shooting attacks. Look at that, both War Trombones, target 7 damage, waver. So that's very handy because an individual flying around with my war machines would not be good news. Over here, the Mincer. This is the unit of Fallen that was already damaged, and you can see they've got another damage marker stacked up on top of the previous one, which probably goes up to 10. So that means they're probably on at least 13 damage there. The Mincer added to that, but then double one of them. And did I use my reroll there? I don't remember. We'll see. I may have already used it, possibly. I managed to waver the Tundra Wolves again, and I think this was with the Fleabag Sniffs from their shooting, which is off on the right. So on his turn, the King on Chimera charges into a War Trombone. He realizes how nasty they are now, after they wavered Herger. The Fallen go back into the Mincer. And over here, the King on Chimera obviously kills the Trombone and then turns to face the Rabble Horde. but actually he ends up positioning facing that way, actually, because this was going to be a flank at this stage. So we rejigged that a bit. Then these Direfang Riders killed whatever was in the woods, presumably. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was probably... Was it trolls? Were there some trolls in there? Let's see. Going back. It could have been this guy, actually. This individual. That's probably what it was. So an individual dead in the woods. And look at that. As revenge for the double one that I rolled on them, the Fallen then double one on the Mincer. Which it looks like they only did 5 damage anyway, but it's still funny when the double one comes up, regardless of what was actually needed. Turn 4. Let's see, was there another dice picture a second ago? Turn 3. Yeah, not very many pictures from turn 3. Okay, so turn 4, here we go. Trolls and the Spitter Regiment both charged into those Direfang Riders and killed them. The double hindered charge through the woods. Then the Giant and the Bruiser finish off the Fallen that were in the middle. So they've just turned around to face threats and sit on objectives. So he's running out of units rapidly now. And the game is taking a very similar turn to the first game. Rock Lobbers killing things and just munching through things. Let's see, what do the Fleabag Sniffs do? Well, they delete something. What was it? Was that more Tundra Wolves? I don't remember, but they killed something, obviously. Then the Rabble Horde charge into the King on Chimera, put 3 damage on him, so he's not going to be flying anywhere, which is all they wanted, really. And then this side has been totally cleared. I'm just sitting on objectives. So he's got this guy left, and at this stage he's running away because he just wants to preserve some points here and stop me racing ahead of him in the leader table. So he runs off, and the 2 Scolds are running off to hide behind that piece of impassable terrain if they can make it. Turn 5. So I'm just chasing him down at this point, chasing down his final 3 models. It's obviously going to be a win. It's just a question of how much I can kill. So they can't obviously reach him, but they're nearly there. And I do manage to waver this guy with shooting attacks. 3 damage on him. That's going to stop him hiding. And you can see I've barely done any movement here because it's going to be a win. I'm just sitting on all the objectives, just shooting down what I can in the last couple of turns. That guy's hiding. This guy's hiding. But the Rock Lobber manages to kill the wavered Skald. So it's obviously hitting on a 6 because it's an individual, but he does manage to hit and finish him off. So there's some nice points for me there. Sitting on an objective, sitting on an objective, sitting on an objective, just within 3 inches there. And that's the end of that game. So that is a very large win. But because the unit that survived, the King on Chimera, was so expensive, I think I only actually got 4 kill points there. So it's going to be 9 points possibly. I'm not sure if it was quite at the maximum. I think it was just off. Because let's see, my opponent had, it looks like he had 400-ish points left. So presumably the King on Chimera must be 200 and something, not quite 300, probably just below. And then I suppose I've just got the book right here, haven't I? I could just have a look and see how expensive that thing is. Let's see, how much is a King on Chimera? It's presumably very expensive. Here we go. 310 points. Wow, okay, I thought it would be like 290, but no, 310. So then with the Scald, yeah, so that's right. So I didn't quite get maximum points because the King on Chimera lived, but I barely lost anything and juicy amount of points, and I'm going towards the top tables now. And here we go, game number 3. So this is a Goblin versus Goblin game. And when I looked at this Goblin list, this contained a lot of the things that I did not want to face with my list. So it's actually Goblins with allies. It has Abyssal allies in there, this Goblin army. It's got only a few Abyssal units in there, but I'll get to them in a second. So the reason that this army scares my list a little bit, he's got 3 Troll Hordes. So regenerating units is one of the things I didn't want to come up against. because that will negate some of my shooting damage as they close in on me, but they are a good speed to Wind Blast. On the other hand, he has a lot of drops like me, but most of his drops are fighty. A lot of my drops are individuals and war machines. Most of his can fight. He's only got 3 war trombones and maybe a couple of flaggits as the only things really that aren't going to be fighting. I've got a lot more than that don't want to get into the fight. So if it gets into a slugfest, then he would win. He's got a lot more beasts. So the scenario here is loot. So there are 3 tokens, 1 in the middle, 1 out in that corner, and 1 out in this corner. Well, not really the corner, but you know what I mean. Right out on the flanks. And we're going to try and collect those. So 3 tokens, lots of drops on each side. I've barely deployed anything on the left flank here, and he's barely deployed anything on the right. So the main battle line there, kind of split in 2 by this piece of terrain, and my main battle line is kind of there with just some shooty stuff over here. So here's what he's got. He's got 1 Mincer, and then he's got 3 trombones back there. He's got a Flaggit, and then these are the Abyssal Allies. He's got 2 units of Tortured Souls, which are something that I would really not like to be facing with this list because they've got decent nerve. It's good enough so that 1 rock throw isn't going to toast them, and they fly, of course, and they have ability to get their wounds back because I think they have life leech 2. And then he has a little Abyssal caster in the middle there. So those 2 flying units are going to be a real nuisance, which is why I've got both my war trombones on that side. Then what else has he got? He's got 1 troll horde there and a more beast regiment. Then another Mincer, another more beast regiment, 2 more troll hordes, and another more beast regiment. So lots of more beasts, lots of troll hordes. So he's really strong in combat. So if my rock throwers don't perform and don't kill things, it's going to be pretty tricky to outfight all of this slot, because it's going to dish out a lot of pain when it actually comes down to melee. More beasts, over here, and another Mincer. So triple Mincer, triple trombone, is it triple or quadruple more beast? Quadruple more beast regiment, triple troll horde, double tortured souls. So yes, definitely a lot of the same units popping up in this list. So my deployment, I've got my Fleabag Sniffs over on this side. They're just going to pepper in with shots and back away if need be. And there's a token I'll want to collect in the middle there at some point when I've killed what little forces he has over here. The main battle line, the trolls and the giant in the middle, because he's got a lot of meat, so I want this big concentrated meaty line here. I've got some inspiring behind them. I've got the Wind Blast Wizard there as well to keep his stuff at bay if I get the opportunity, and if not, I'll just lightning bolt with him. Then we've got the Rabble Horde there. Mincer as backup. The Rock Lobber, which is going to be able to shoot at trolls and mincers over the top of my goblins because they're taller. And then we've got the Troll Bruiser and another Flaggit there. A Whiz on the hill, 2 Rock Lobbers on the hill. And this side, which ends up being up against both his flying units. Because he had so many drops, we were finishing our deployment at virtually the same time. He had very few artifacts at all in his list. So it was just tons of units, tons of potentially dangerous units. So I wasn't really able to maximize my usual advantage in number of drops. So I couldn't necessarily get everything I wanted to counter his flyers because he saved them till last. So I did keep my war trombones till the end though. So they are over here supporting this unit. So if he were to charge in there and kill that unit of spitters, they would get tromboned, hopefully to death. So that's a little bit of a deterrent for him. And over on this flank, I've just got this tiny unit of spitters. So if he wants to spend time going over and killing them, it's not going to be a great problem for me. So there's one of the tokens, which for some reason has the reroll token next to it. There's another one with the chest clock, and the other one there. So turn 1. Now this time I do not win the first turn roll. So my opponent, obviously because I've got so much shooting, decides to go first, which is not good at all, because he's going to be able to get himself in range with some of his flyers to strike in turn 2. So I may get less shooting in than I would have liked here. You can see also he's got lots of units behind each other, so I'm not going to be able to do too much wind blasting, which on the one hand is sad, but on the other hand, if that's why he positioned them that way, then it is forcing the opponent to deploy in a way that maybe they wouldn't have done otherwise. Who knows, though, because he doesn't want more beasts being shot. They can't stand up to much, so maybe he would have done exactly the same without any wind blast threat. Over on this side, he moves up and then changes his mind and positions them like that, and then changes his mind again, realizing they're only Fleabag Sniffs. I want to get as close to them as possible, so let's send the Mincer full speed ahead. Full mince ahead, perhaps. This Mincer is going for that token. With my turn, I move some of my units. I don't want to get within charge range of any of his stuff. So Giant and Trolls creeping up. And you can see I did some shooting damage. He's got these bizarre counters for wounds, but you can just about see, I think that says 1 wound for the Mincer. That would have been from the Sniffs. Then there's, it looks like 5 damage inflicted to those Trolls. That was possibly a big rock thrower that did that, or maybe some spitters. Oh, the big rock throwers have a picture. They must have hit the Tortured Souls, or maybe one of them did, but only 6 damage. So that's not going to be quite enough, and they're going to be on me in the next turn. So it's looking ominous. Then this Mincer takes 2 damage from my Spitter Regiment, no doubt. So not enough to get rid of that. Turn 2. So let's see. Tortured Souls into the small Spitter unit. So they were obviously sacrificial. They're going to die. And his Mincer is also going to pick up the token over there. Other Tortured Souls into these Spitters, which I don't mind too much. If they die, he's going to take a double Trombone to the face. If they survive, that's holding up his flyers a bit longer. His War Trombones are moving up slowly but steadily, and the Trolls and the More Beasts are starting to spread out a bit, looking for charge angles. And here he's positioned these More Beasts to stare into the flank of my Trolls, which I don't like one bit, and his Mincer is edging in closer towards the Fleabag Sniffs. There's his battle line after he's finished setting it up. A nice straight line there, which isn't going to allow any flank charges if I had anything like that lined up. And there's a slightly different angle on the same thing, I think, just when he's finished tinkering with his unit movements. This guy in the middle, what does he do? He moves again to behind that unit. So I think one of these guys, it might be him that has the Spark Stone, so I am a bit concerned about that. Wayne Caitlin has popped up in the chat there. Okay, so this guy is just hiding because he doesn't want to get shot. So he's hiding behind the More Beasts. And look at that. They obviously kill the Spitter Regiment that was right there. And the other ones survive and he takes 7 damage. So they're all right with that. But the Tortured Souls do have Life Leech. So the damage I inflicted earlier is going to be eaten back slowly, which is one of the things I didn't want to come up against, you may recall. And look at this. On my turn, I do a bit of damage to the Mincer and then double 6 to get rid of it. So that's the Mincer in the center by all the Trolls. Obviously, you can see them there. So that was nice. Nice bit of luck there to counteract the maybe average rolling that I've had so far in this game. You can see those Trolls have taken 6 damage up to this point. But of course, they're going to be able to regen if I don't stack it up quickly. And the Giant goes into these Trolls. You can see a wider view in a minute. But he doesn't do too much to them. And the Sniffs. And this guy with the Diadem of Dragonkind, they kill. You can see there the More Beasts that were poised in his flank have now been killed. So that's nice. And then you can see a nice wide shot of how the battle's looking here. So it's looking even at this stage. I've got my Flaggit positioned to prevent the Trolls from countercharging or charging into the flank of the Giant there, because I don't want him to just instantly die and then all his forces turn around and face me. So I'd like them to waste a turn fighting him. What I should have done, though, was to make sure that the Trolls were up within charge range after I'd fought them, although they can always fall back a certain distance. So, maybe I could have been a bit more aggressive with the Trolls here. But his flyers are going to be annoying if I can't hold them up for much longer. I think my War Trombones were possibly what did the damage to those Trolls. I think my Rock Lobbers were misfiring a bit so far. Not too many hits. Turn 3. Well, you can see charges again into the Spitter Horde with that unit, and the other Tortured Souls into the War Trombone. And these More Beasts go into the flank of the Giant. They're going to be hindered, so it's not that scary, but they do have quite a lot of attacks when they're in the flank, that is. So then we've got the Mincer moving forward still, right up to them now. So I've backed away as far as I can to stay out of charge range as long as this. So I've got one more turn to kill it before I get charged, which I'm confident in doing because I've got a plan there. And over here, this guy has positioned himself to spread some inspiring around, no doubt, when I charge in. So this little dude here, well, very disappointing. He wavers my big rock thrower with 1 damage. He just rolled really high with the nerve. So that, I suppose that counters me killing the Mincer on a 6/6. So just that little caster who only has about 1 attack, I think. 1 damage, and that can't shoot now. So not a good game for the rock lovers. However, look at this. He puts all that damage onto the War Trombone. I think he actually double ones them because it survives, I think. You can see that my Flaggit that was parked in front of them to hold them up is dead, as expected. The Giant only takes 4 damage, though. He rolls really badly with this attack. And there, in my turn, the Mincer, my plan was to move this guy behind with the Diadem of Dragonkind, shoot at the unarmoured rear of the Mincer, and it's dead. So those guys are safe, and they're going to be able to walk up and collect the loot now, and then just fire off for the rest of the game, hopefully. The Trolls come into the flank of his More Beasts that flank the Giant, and I kill them. And the Giant does really badly in combat again and barely does any damage to those Trolls, which is not nice. And my Trolls go into his Trolls there, and yeah, not much damage either. So in combat here, I'm rolling quite badly. Troll Bruiser in there as well, just to tie up as many units as possible to minimize the amount of flank charging that goes on. Looks like I do 5 to the More Beasts there, but I can't even waver them. And one thing I didn't really consider during this game is yellow-bellied, because if you're coming up against lots of More Beasts, they are yellow-bellied. So if you have the opportunity to offer a flank to someone, make sure you don't offer it to a yellow-bellied unit, because then they won't have to even make the roll. Whereas if you make sure they're in the front and maybe put something else in the flank, then the More Beasts could always just fail that roll for the yellow-bellied. So it was something to consider. With this army, it's not that big of a deal because the other units around are Trolls, so being flank charged by them is not exactly a picnic. So you can see he's clearing off my shooty flank here and working his way in, and it's still close in the middle. We've both got units in reserve. As far as the tokens, he's got 1 on this unit here. The other one is sitting in the middle somewhere. It may be on one of his units by now. And the one on this flank is going to be mine easily. Turn 4. So he manages to get flank charges in. Trolls on the Bruiser, and and More Beasts on the Trolls. So I just didn't have enough units, basically. I needed to kill things when I charged into them, and I didn't really kill any of them. So as a result of that, things are now getting flanked a lot. He's got way more potent combat units than I have, and I'm feeling the pinch now of taking such a shooty list. When it comes into a fight like this, I'm seriously outnumbered. And here he charges 1 of his Tortured Souls units into the Mincer, the other one into the Rock Thrower that was already damaged. And his War Trombones are moving their way up. And look at that, they kill both my War Trombones. Mass damage inflicted. Wow. And there's his Tortured Souls, killing whatever they were killing. And these ones don't quite manage to kill the Mincer. So you can see here that my Bruiser and Trolls, I believe, are going to be dead here. Yes, they are. Bruiser dead, Trolls dead. Not looking good. And look at that, the Giant's dead as well. It hadn't taken that much damage, actually, but it was a really good nerve roll to kill him. So I decided that was worthy of a picture. So he's toast. The whole center of my army is collapsing now. And we could be in a downward spiral from this point. So the Mincer's going to go back in and attack them in a minute. And my Rabble Horde go into his More Beasts that were in the center there. And I do quite a bit of damage to them, but I need to actually use the reroll to kill them, because I probably double one them. So I used the reroll, because if I didn't, then this unit was just going to get minced from all sides. They may do anyway, but at least they've taken something down with them. And again, my troll unit fails horribly to fight this unit of his trolls. I seem to inflict 4 damage each time, which is definitely below average for troll-on-troll action. Let's see. So you've got 18 attacks hitting on 4s, so you should be getting 9 hits. And then they are, against other trolls, they're wounding on 3s. So 4 is definitely below average. Then these guys are moving up. These Sniffs are going to pick up that token. Turn 5 with a hand in the shot. And yes, so there was a little bit of space for him to get into these trolls here in the flank. So that means whamp, they're going to get munched. The more beasts aren't going to kill them in one go, but it's a start. Over here, he's going to kill another Rotlobber, and the Mincer's probably going to go this turn as well. And he's just clearing off the middle of my army here. Those trolls, I can't remember what they were fighting there, but they're about to start shredding everything at this stage. And look at that, he wavers my Rabble on a 6/6. Wow, wow. So there's been a few extreme dice rolls in this game. Not a ridiculous amount, but there's been a fair few. So the Sniffs have picked up the token. And over here, look at that. Trolls die, of course, and his trolls have barely taken any damage considering how many times I've attacked them. They've regened a bit of it back, but not a huge amount. It was mainly just my attack rolls with the giant, and my trolls were so terrible during this game. So I really needed to push through and get past his trolls to have any chance of winning, and obviously my units have lost out on that fight. This guy, though, with the Diadem of Dragonkind, is still in there. So it's looking bad because I've only got the Rabble in the middle there, surrounded by everything, but it's still winnable because his troll unit has the loot token, and I'm going to be going last. So that means I'll have a chance to shoot everything I've got at the troll unit that has the loot and possibly kill them in the last turn. If they drop it, it'll be a draw, 1 each. Obviously, I would lose on kill points, but it would still get me 2 extra points compared to a loss. So it's not over yet. Final turn. So obviously he's going to munch that unit with everything. And look at that. He does 1 damage to my Whiz, probably with his little Abyssal caster. And he rolls very nicely on the nerve roll and kills it. Wow, wow. You can actually see the nice blue kind of underbelly of the Morbeast there. You can't normally see that from most angles. It actually looks good from that side, doesn't it? Very tasty. But 1 damage was enough to kill him. So, wow, wow. Rebel dead. So these guys and the one surviving other model are going to have to shoot his trolls dead in my last turn, which is him. And can they do it? No, they can't, because that's the last picture. So I don't manage to put enough damage onto them. So can't make them drop the loot. So he has 2 tokens. I have 1 at the end of the game. And there was a mistake I made somewhere in this game, or it may have been in a different game actually, but I'll talk about this now. I think it may have been in game 1. I got a unit of trolls killed because I often forget to do anything after I've killed someone with a charge. So I'll kill a unit, and then when you can either overrun or move backwards or turn around on the spot, I just forget to do anything with them. That's the #1 thing I forget in Kings of War. After I've killed a unit, I just leave my unit exactly where it was and forget to pivot them, so I end up getting flank charged. I don't know why that is such a blind spot for me, but it's something I obviously have to work on. The #1 thing I forget, even more than yellow-bellied rolls, is that. So if anyone has any theories on why I might forget that, maybe I just get too excited at the thought of the next turn, and I think, well, it's over now once I've already rolled the nerve and there's nothing else to be done after that. But I need to get out of that mindset. I need to actually remember to pivot my units, because I think it was in game 1, I forgot to mention it, I lost a unit to that. I think it was game 1. It could have been this game, though, and I just missed where it happened. Okay, then. So that was a loss, obviously. Let's see. How many points did I get for that one? Not many. I only killed 510 points, and I lost almost everything. I only had 190 points left on the table. So a big loss there to counteract the positivity of the 2 big wins, even though one of them was technically a scenario draw. So in game 4, this scenario is control. And this is the ideal table for control. This is the only one that was made of the realms of battle boards, which are divided up nicely into 2x2 squares, which is exactly how control works. So there's no measuring required to see where the different territories are. It's just nicely marked out on the table for you already. So that's very, very handy. Best table for it. There are hills, but we decided to just have the upper part of the hill as a height 2 hill and the rest of it as flat. Otherwise, they would cover half the table virtually. So just the upper portions. And also there's a piece of impassable terrain on top of that hill, which is odd. So there's a bit of hill in each deployment zone, but not as much as some of the other tables. There's a big impassable tower there, a couple of forests. So I'm against undead here. Now, this is an army I've faced before. It may be exactly the same list as last time I played it. And last time I played it, I was using goblins at this very venue, and I won that game. So we shall see how this one goes. I think it's the same list anyway, virtually the same. So things I don't like facing in this list against my list would be wraiths. Although, as far as flyers go, they're not as scary as some of the others because they've got low nerve. They're only troops, so they're only nerve 12. So one rock hit on them could take them out in one go. And of course, they're undead and shambling, so they can't just be flying around 20 inches around the table to get to where they need to be. So not as scary as some other flyers, and they're so high defense that my army has quite a lot of piercing with the rocks and the war trombones, and lots of crushing strength with the giant, the bruiser, the trolls, and lightning bolt with the piercing as well. So I think my army is kitted out to deal with them, hopefully. There are some other things that are quite scary in there as well, which we'll get to in a moment. So you can see the way he's deployed almost everything in that corner. Even though we have to conquer territory, I think he's focusing more on killing because he can't spread out too much because he doesn't have that many drops. So I'm able to put not much stuff down this side. My main plan here is, you can see I've got this Rabble Horde behind the Spitter Horde here. You might think that's an odd choice, but of course the Spitters can shoot, and I wouldn't want someone in front of them. And if he comes in and kills them, I'll be able to countercharge with the Rabble. And I'm hoping to just not move them at all, because they're only 125 points. I'm just going to leave them in my central zone, because at the end of the game, if he controls my central area here, he would get 2 points for it rather than 1 for any other territory. And I would get 2 for his central area. So I want to keep a horde in there because it's a higher unit strength than any other unit. So I brought them along for scenarios like this, so they're just going to sit in there the whole game, hopefully, and maybe they won't even be required to do anything. It depends if I can kill enough with the rock lobbers. So let's see what he's got. He's got those wraiths behind the tower, which you saw, which is over here on their own. Then in the bulk of his army, he's got more wraiths there. He's got a horde of revenants. He's got a horde of zombie trolls and a regiment of mummies. So lots of juicy targets there. The mummies do have regen, which makes them slightly less appealing of a target, but then their nerve isn't as high. And lots of things I can't waver, though, which is nice in that they're not going to be sprinting across the table to get to me faster, but horrible in that I will have to actually kill them. I can't just waver them with the rocks. And they're quite high defense, all this lot as well, which are ideal targets for rock lobbers. He's got more wraiths over here. He's got werewolves, which are quite a scary one, of course. And then he's got Lady Alona, who is fast. I think she's speed 8. So she's virtually the same as a Vampire Lord, except I think she's -1 to hit in close combat, something like that. And then he's also got a Revenant King on Flying Undead Worm there, represented by, I think that's a Demon Prince model. So he's got lots of fast units, but he's also got this slow, lumbering wall of meat in the middle. So he wasn't thrilled about seeing what I had. I think he was thinking that he didn't match up very well against my list, and I would tend to agree, probably. I think I've got things that can deal with most of this if the rock lobbers hit things. If they don't, and I get all these flying units in my midst, and Lady Alona, who's really fast as well, and the werewolves, then maybe he could get something done. It depends on the rock lobbers, really. If I can kill a few units before he gets here, I think I can take it. And here's my deployment. So this is on the far right flank here. I've got the Mincer there because there's this big piece of impassable terrain here. So he's not going to be able to land there and then charge. He's going to have to land on this side and then charge. So I'm going to have the Mincer there and hopefully move it up so that it'll be able to charge whatever comes over the impassable terrain. I've got all my annoying shooting attacks around this side, well, many of them, because that's where his most dangerous flyers are, as far as I'm concerned. The Revenant King on Undead Worm is something that I would like to be able to scorch to death with 2 War Trombones, and I've got my Holy Hand Grenade there. I've got some Lightning Bolt and Wind Blast on him, and then I've got a bit of Troll Meat in there for support. Small Shooter Regiment just to give them a bit more fire support over on this side, because his flyers are going to have to land in view on top of the hill. Then on this side, the Giant with some more Trolls, the Diadem Dragonkind, then we've got the Wiz with the powerful Lightning Bolt there, and then this little setup I was talking about, Rock Lobber there, and in this corner, the other Rock Lobber and the Fleabag Sniffs, which are countering his Wraiths up there. So if he wants to land his Wraiths in range to charge, I will have the option of charging him, which may stop him flying, or just pelting him with arrows and rocks, hopefully. I think I've angled the Rock Lobbers well enough so they'll be able to shoot them, depending where they land. Turn 1. So he wins the turn 1 roll-off, and he decides to take it so he can get moving before he gets pelted with rocks, which is probably a good idea, because you want to give me as few shots as possible throughout the game. So that's, again, this is a dice just marking where my charge range is, probably with the Mincer. He didn't want to get charged by that instantly. That would be a really terrible idea. And then all this big slow meat wall with a Revenant King as well there on a horse, just going up slowly. The Wraiths going out in front. So with them being the ideal rock target, I'm going to start trying to pelt them immediately. On my turn, the Werewolf's hanging back a little bit because he doesn't want to get rocked, and this hill is currently blocking line of sight to them. So he flies the Revenant King on Worm up just behind Ilona as well. And you'll notice the way he's angled his models, I'm not going to be able to Wind Blast them, which is obviously a clever move, putting them at that angle there, so that if I Wind Blast them that way, they'd just touch the edge. If I Wind Blast them that way, they'd touch the edge, so they can't really be blasted anywhere. So if you're up against Wind Blast, that's something to consider, the angle of your units and what's around them. Oh, you can see his hand, a blurry hand there, as he surges these Revenants up behind the Wraiths, so he couldn't surge them that far, but it gets them across the battlefield a little bit faster. And look at this, the shooting attacks that I dish out put 6 damage already at least onto him. I'm not sure if there was another dice on there, but he's taken damage instantly on my turn. The things that would have been shooting him, both Trombones, I think, at least that one. I'm not sure this one was able to get in range, but this one was, and also the Holy Hand Grenade was thrown at him, and probably these guys shot at him as well. The Mincer is just waiting there, ready to pounce. So he's got options, depending what he wants to charge. I think the Trolls are possibly out of range here. They may be in. The Giant's definitely out. The Bruiser's out. And he's got a lot of things to choose from. Whatever he attacks, something is going to be able to attack him the next turn, though, because there's just too many targets to take out. He can only kill 2 things here. And the Mincer is quite a scary one. So if he ignores that and just charges into one of these things, and then maybe doesn't kill it by some really terrible rolling, he would then get flanked or recharged by a Mincer, which is what he really doesn't want. So he may have to prioritize taking out that, but then that leaves Trombones, it leaves grenades, all kinds of stuff. So we'll see what he chooses. He's also got these Wraiths here who could strike at a variety of units. I've positioned the Bruiser so he wouldn't get flank charged by anyone, I think. And over on this side, this Flaggit with the Diadem of Dragonkind is just moving up towards his meat block, because he's not going to be able to catch this guy. So I'm just going to be able to scorch and then back away. The Giant's just waiting there. Over on this side, the Rock Throwers. What do? Well, look at that. At least one must have hit, because it did 6 damage to his Revenants. Now, last time we played with Goblins, I had 1 Rock Thrower, and that just, with unerring accuracy, kept pinging damage onto his Revenant Horde in that game as well. So I'm sure he's thinking that he's in for more of the same here. Now, actually, I want to go back a second, because there's an incident, not really an incident, but something coming up in a minute with this wizard, who I moved him up this direction, and then later on I move him back in this direction. And because I moved him that way initially and then changed my mind and moved him back, we weren't 100% sure whether I had enough movement to reach where I wanted to go in this direction. But with all this picture evidence here, I can show you that it was all totally legit, because let's just see, where's a picture of him? Where does he start? Okay, you can see he's there next to that. It's like a smudge, isn't it, of the earth there. Slightly different shade of green. So remember that he was next to that, and he's only going to move 5 inches now because he's going to be using a lightning bolt. So there he is, and there's the smudge that he was next to, so 5 inches to get there. And he lightning bolts 2 damage onto those wraiths, which is a start. Okay, turn 2. So he elects to take out a war trombone and a rock thrower. So he's obviously had enough of the rocks hitting things. He wants to kill that one, kill a trombone, because they're obviously a threat to his flyers. And then he's not going to be charged by the Mincer, because he's behind it. So probably the best he could do here. And his wraiths charge into this Flaggit. So yeah, we'll see whether he can kill that. These wraiths won't be able to charge anything, but he is going to use his Revenant King on a horse there to surge them in a moment, which we'll see. So he positions them there 1 inch away, and then he's going to surge them in with the Revenant King from over there, because they're on the hill, so their height is sufficient that he can see them. Over here, he moves his wraiths onto the hill, so he could now either charge the big rock thrower or the Fleabags, depending if I actually shoot him or if I charge him in my turn. So he obviously kills the rock thrower and the war trombone with those, with Ilona and the Revenant King, obviously. And the 2 units of wraiths kill the Flaggit with ease. So he's got lots of flyers, and I don't have that much to deal with them. So that's how he positions them after the combat, because he wants to avoid being rear charged or flank charged by a Mincer. And then, so the Mincer does go into one of the units and kills it, and the trolls go into the other one. The trolls that were... Can we find a shot with them in it? No, we can't. But we get the idea. So the trolls were down here somewhere. They charge in. 4 damage. Don't kill them. Those guys have turned around. So I think they were able to shoot. So this guy. Now, I moved him the other way first and then changed my mind. So I was going to bring him back. And with 5 inches, I would have been able to get him to there. So I thought I was being quite conservative and not moved him quite as far, because he's obviously not come down as far as that smudge, which is where he started. So he's perfectly all right there. So he was then able to get within 24 inches to shoot, along with this unit, which pivoted all the way up to him. And the war trombone chipped in as well. All that shooting puts the Revenant King up to 12 damage, and I was able to waver him, which is perfect, because now he's not going to be able to attack anything. And it's just going to be Lady Ilona killing one thing rather than both of them taking 1 target each. And then he's at death's door now, so I should be able to shoot him to death next turn. I charge the Fleabag Sniffs into the wraiths, because I don't want them charging my big rock thrower. And this is the only way to accomplish that, because we're both... Well, he's height 1, and the Fleabags are height 2, so we can't see over them. And if I do damage, I'll stop him flying in general. But I don't do damage. But I'm still blocking his line of sight to the rock thrower, so he's not going to be able to charge it. And he doesn't have any surge over on this side. Oh, you can see, now that's an interesting view of a hand, isn't it? Look at the tension in those knuckles, where the ends of the fingers are slightly bent from the pressing down on the table. Look at that intensity there. Okay, so you can see that his wall of meat is moving across that obstacle there. One good thing about undead not being able to move out the double is that you're not concerned at all, other than for hindered charge purposes. You don't really care about obstacles and difficult terrain, because you're just walking through them anyway. But he's setting up, and it's not going to be long until he's able to charge with things like the werewolves. I'm just making sure not to give him any easy flank charges here, which is difficult with undead because of the surging. Turn 3. So you can see that Lady Ilona is going for the Mincer. Probably a good idea. That is a big threat to that unit, and he double charges the werewolves and the wraiths into my trolls. So he might be able to kill them with a good roll. We'll see. And he charges his Revenant Horde into the giant. The Revenant Horde, which has taken more damage from further shooting, you'll see there. He'll be hoping to just do as much as they can before they die, because it's a slow trek towards death for them at this stage. Then he went back into the Fleabag Sniffs. He's hoping to clear them out as fast as possible so he can then fly off and kill other things. And there's the state of his other units there that have moved up. He's got Revenant King there. Ilona manages to kill the Mincer. The giant only takes 4 damage from that horde, so he's all right. And my trolls are dead, though. The trolls over here. So the wraiths and the werewolves killed them. So I'm going to have to be careful. Now, in my turn, you'll notice that I've got my war trombone here. I've got this guy down here with he would have used his lightning bolt this turn. And they killed the Revenant King on Undead Worm. So I didn't need to shoot anything else at them because I did enough damage and it was gone. So that's nice that he's dead. And up here I triple charge into this horde with the Bruiser, the Trolls and the Giant. But unfortunately I can't remove them, despite doing what appears to be 16 damage. So it must have been a relatively poor roll. Let's see, because I think a reasonably average roll would have taken them out. Then over here, the Fleabag Sniffs take damage, and there's some life-leeched wound back for them. But he's not done enough to kill them, though, so I'm holding them in place for a while. Now, as far as the scenario goes, both of these units could be vital because they're fast, and they can leap onto another table section that's maybe up for grabs at the end. So this guy with the Diadem of Dragonkind puts damage onto the mummies, represented by zombies, but they are mummies, I assure you. And turn 4. So he double charges the werewolves and the Revenant Horde into the Giant, hoping to get rid of that. It's obviously a threat. And he was doing this to get as many units into combat as possible. So if he charged other things, then it would have potentially either left flanks open for his units because there would have been gaps between them, or they would have had to center in such a way that not many of them could fight. So he decided this was optimal, and the mummies have moved up there. They've moved up far enough so I can't do a corkscrew charge on them with the trolls. If the trolls are able to see them, they would be able to do that, but of course they can't because they're too far. He double charges Wraiths and Alona into this Spitter Regiment, so they're probably going to die. And this duel continues between these units here, and the Wraiths actually kill them this time. So he's going to be able to charge my War Machines if I don't kill them soon. And the Spitter Regiment are dead. And the Giant's dead, so that was a good turn for him. And at this stage, he's probably thinking, maybe not in the bag, but he's definitely on his way to a win because he's taken out a lot of my units now. And I haven't killed that much yet. So, War Trombone. And a Lightning Bolt. Look at that, they take out Wraiths. Now, were those Wraiths on full health? Let's see. They were on 2. So the War Trombone and a Lightning Bolt 3 killed them after putting 6 on them. So on average, yeah, they should die from that, but they were inspired. So you would think maybe they would have a chance to live, but no, they're dead. So those Wraiths are dead. Look at this, big rock thrower. Hits these Wraiths up here that were only on, I think they were on 1 or 0 damage at this stage. So big rock thrower hits them and kills them just before they would have charged into it and killed it. So that is a big deal there. That is a potentially scoring unit, a fast one to be sent around the table at the end to jump onto different control zones, and also he could have taken out my artillery. So very nice there to kill them. The other Rotlobber and the Spitter Horde. Look at that, the mummies are dead. So they were on 6 damage, I think, and the Spitter Horde and the Rotlobber combined both did successful damage and killed the Mummy Regiment in one fell swoop. And then look at this, the Trolls finish off the Revenant Horde. So that is just 4 units, some of them fairly fresh, some of them really damaged, like the Revenant Horde are obviously going to die, but the 2 Wraith units weren't that close to death. The Mummy unit still had a fair bit to go, but enough damage was dished out on them, so 4 units dead in one go, and that has completely swung the game back, probably in my favour. The Troll Bruiser doesn't manage to kill the werewolves, though. Then, okay, this is an example of the mistake I make here. You'll see when the trolls killed that unit, they could have turned round to face the werewolves here. Or at least turn around so nobody could flank them. But again, I just completely forgot to do anything with them after they killed the unit in combat. Forgot to pivot them, forgot to move them forwards or back. So they end up getting flanked by werewolves as a result of that. So just my silly forgetfulness causes that. And his Revenant King, you can see a bit of a hairy arm there. Revenant King charges into my Flaggit, but he isn't going to kill him, I don't believe. And here, Alona is clearing off the last War Trombone. So she spent virtually the entire game mopping up really feeble units, like the Mincer, War Trombones and such. So she would have liked to have been doing more than that, I think, but there were so many annoying little units that had to be dealt with. and the Revenant King on Worm was taken out without accomplishing that much. I think he only killed one unit, and then he was wavered and then toasted. So she was on her own in that department. My trolls obviously died due to that blunder and not turning them. They may have died from a double front charge from zombie trolls and werewolves regardless, but they would have had more of a chance of survival, obviously, because there's lots of hindering going on with this terrain here. So Ilona kills the War Trombone, of course. Now, at this stage, as far as scoring units, the Bruiser's still alive. He's only got these 2 hordes here that are alive to score with. So I decide I've got them penned in my central area here. So if I just box them in, stop them being able to leave, then that's it. They're stuck there because I've got 2 hordes in this zone. I've got my Spitter Horde and I've got my Rabble Horde, which haven't participated in the game at all. So I actually move those backwards away so he can't overrun through my wizard here and get towards them. And he's going to find it very, very difficult because he's not going to be able to move the werewolves that way or that way with Nimble because he would go to within an inch of a unit. And I don't even think there's space because they're so tightly packed. So I just park all my individuals in front of him to prevent him escaping, because this area is then going to be a draw, which means that if I can find a safe space for the Troll Bruiser to go in, then I can just win the game, because this area will be contested and wherever the Bruiser goes, I'll just get points for. So if I were to leave him in here, it would be a win because I would have, let's see, because a Horde is worth 3. So he has 6 points in there. I have 6. So the Bruiser would make it 7. But if I leave the Bruiser in here, I was struggling to see a place he could have been safe, because let's see where he was. So he's there and Lady Ilona is over on the right here somewhere. So I felt if I just moved him into this zone here, she could have charged him. If I'd kept him in my own home zone, the only possible safe space would have been somewhere back here, I think. But then I would have risked the overrun of the zombie trolls after they kill the wizard. So he could have then been killed, which would have turned it into a draw. So I elect to position him at the back here. You can just see the tip of his base and you'll see where he ends up. But so the only thing he can do, which I totally forgot about, I totally forgot that zombie trolls were a shambling unit for a second for some reason, and that they could be surged. And more to the point, I think I forgot that he has a surging character left alive. He's got the Revenant King up there. So if he turns them round on the spot, which I left him in a position that he was able to do, and then charge, and then surge, should I say, forward, and gets a really good roll, he could actually reach the Troll Bruiser who is up there. He would have to roll slightly above average with the surge, but you'll take it if you're trying to get from a loss to a draw, and it's your only chance. However, all his ideas of that would have been done away with instantly, because I had 2 rock lobbers, not rock robbers, although he may consider them rock robbers after their accuracy in this game. Both of them took aim at his Revenant King on a horse, and I told him I was feeling lucky because it's an individual, so -1 to hit, so I was needing 6s to hit. So it's a 1 in 3 chance that one of them will hit. So I went for it, and look at that. I did some damage. I hit him with one of them, did damage, and then wavered him, which meant he's not going to be able to do any shooting attacks, which includes surge. So he could not surge the zombie trolls. So he did point out what his plan was at this stage, which I obviously said I didn't really think of at the time. So you can see the distance there. So I think he would have needed 5 inches out of about 9. So he would have needed just above average to get into combat with the Bruiser, because that's the only place he was safe from being charged by Lady Ilona, and also being safe from any overrun of this unit that I could see. So I positioned him there, and then let's see, turn 6. So with his turn 6, he kills my individuals there, obviously. This Ilona and the werewolves both kill that one. Zombie trolls kill that one. And the Troll Bruiser just decides, you know what, I'm just going to walk into your zone because that'll score me 2 points. So it'll be 2-0 in points rather than 1-0 if I'd kept him in my own central area. And 2-0 sounds better, doesn't it? So there you go. We've both got 2 hordes in my central area. So that one's a draw, so nobody owns that. And, oh, no, we don't want to see that yet. And the Troll Bruiser claims his central area. That's why Troll Bruisers are handy, because they have certain attributes that an individual has. For example, he's nimble, but he's not an individual. So the benefits of that being he can score in scenarios, and also he can multiply his attacks when he gets flanks and such. There are downsides to not being in an individual, of course, but in this instance it paid off because he was the tiebreaker essentially. So there is a win for me. And both sides did quite a lot of killing. There weren't that many units left. I mean, let's see. So we've got one character left there each. And then there's just what's in this picture is alive and the rock throwers over there. So let's see, I've got written down how many points we killed. So I killed 1,080 points because these units here are really expensive. Werewolves, zombie trolls. Lady Alona is nearly, I think she's about 300 points on her own. And then there's the Revenant King up there as well. So that's a lot of points there in those few units. And then he killed 1,365 because the units I've got left are a lot cheaper, like the Rabble Horde. So the only movement the Rabble Horde did during the entire game was to move backwards twice, I think. They moved backwards once, so this unit could pivot. And then they moved backwards again, along with the Spitters, just to get away from the potential overrun of these zombie trolls here. So they all just moved back to guarantee their survival in turn 6. I did do some shooting at the zombie trolls in the final turn as well to try and kill them, but couldn't do it. So it's a win, and I believe I got probably 8 points. I think I got 3 for the amount of killing I did. So it's a very solid win. My opponent killed slightly more than I did, so he possibly would have got maybe 4 points, so he possibly would have got 5. He would have either got 5 or 4 overall for the scenario loss and the amount of killing he did. So 3, well, one of them was technically a draw, but it's virtually 3 wins and a loss, which is very, very tasty as far as I'm concerned. And I'm hoping that it sneaks me into maybe the top 4. I'm hoping at this stage. However, in the end, there were 18 players, and I actually finished in 6th place. It was congested in a couple of positions, and if I hadn't made a couple of blunders at various points during the tournament, then maybe I could have had extra points. For example, in game 1, if it had been a scenario win rather than a draw, which was very doable, obviously, because I nearly tabled my opponent and barely lost anything, then obviously that would have bumped me up a place or 2, I think. So that would have been handy. I hope you can't hear that ice cream van outside. It's very painfully loud, to me at least. And then the final picture of the tournament, this chap here, this is John, and I took a picture of him because he pointed out that he wore this shirt specifically because I put the word out to the public that wargaming events in general are incredibly bland when it comes to clothing colours, and just attire in general is very, very bland. So he's putting the effort in to brighten tournaments up a bit, as I tend to do. And I'm thinking of varying my wardrobe a bit and not just wearing orange. I'm thinking of going for some other ridiculous neon colours as well to attend tournaments. Because it's nice when it's not just a sea of grey and black t-shirts. I don't know what's happened to my hair here, by the way. It's just gone completely nuts throughout the day. So, thoughts on my performance and the list. Of course, the Rock Lobbers did very well in 3 games out of 4, which, if the Rock Lobbers do very well in 4 games, then I'm confident of winning tournaments in those circumstances. I think it's a decent enough list. There are a few things I would take out if I wanted to push it to the top level of competitiveness, because there are some units for the Goblins that are really good that I just didn't have in that particular list. The Giant is not optimal. It's fun, and it's survivable, it's versatile, it's useful in certain situations, but it's definitely not optimal when you compare it to the potential damage output of Trolls. So when I get more Trolls painted, the Giant may come out in tournament settings, and the Trolls may go in. There are a couple of other things. I like the Flaggit combo with the breath attack and the grenade, but I'm not sure I have enough inspiring across the army because they're often out shooting at things rather than sitting around inspiring people. I might be better off with a Flaggit with something like the boomstick, maybe, so I could stay further away and still fire off attacks. I could stay near my own troops then and actually inspire them, which is what the Flaggits are supposed to be for. because the Troll Bruiser obviously only inspires trolls. So for non-troll units, I only have 2 inspiring models in my whole army at 2,000 points. And those guys are fast running around shooting people. So it's not enough, definitely. Because there were a few times that I suffered big nerve rolls against me, and there was no inspiring within range. So I suffered the effects of that. So I need to fit more inspiring, or at least more stationary inspiring in there. So maybe switching up what I do with the Flaggits, maybe having one on foot with a boomstick, or maybe something else like a Sparkstone, because I did suffer the effects of Sparkstone in game 3. That stopped my wizard from being able to cast spells at about 3 turns during the game. So that's one I may look into. The triple big rock thrower, after a performance like that, there's no way I can leave them out. Really, is there? The double war trombone was really good as well. The difference between 1 war trombone and 2 is huge, because it is the biggest threat against things that land behind your lines. Often there will be big flying monsters that may have up to defense 5, and having that piercing 1 on a breath attack is just really scary, especially when you've got lightning bolts and other things like that that have piercing around the place as well. So it makes people really think twice. And even if they feel they have to land in there, you can kill them, like you saw in this game 4 with the Revenant King on Worm. He was just eating shooting attacks the minute he landed, and there was no let up, and he didn't have enough to actually chase down all of my little annoying shooting attacks. Let's see, Fleabag Rider Sniffs. I like them for scenario play because they can sit on objectives and shoot while they're on there. Other than that, I don't know whether I would say they're optimal, because they're easy to kill, but they're really fast, and just for claiming objectives, I liked having them in there. The Rabble Horde, I really selected them again because I wanted something cheap that would score a lot of points in scenario circumstances like control and dominate situations for unit strength purposes. So I like them. But on the other hand, if I was to take out, let's say, the Giant, the Rabble Horde, and maybe the Spitter Regiment, which is, again, not a particularly optimal unit, I'd put in some Trolls and maybe put in some more Beasts, because they are very, 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 very tasty, and I've got enough to field 2 regiments of them. It's just the fact that they're irregular that makes it difficult for my army composition, because I want to put in so many war machines. I've got 5 war machines. I've got lots of heroes as well. So it limits what I can take if I start putting in irregular units instead of regular units. So I may have to rejig a bit. But taking out a couple of things, maybe putting a couple of different things in, trying out some different combos. But for the most part, I like the way the list is progressing. The triple big rock thrower, on average 1 hit per turn. It's so scary as well. Not being affected by cover, it's one of the few shooting attacks that you just can't hide from at all unless you're hiding behind a unit that is as tall as you or taller. So most things that I would want to be shooting at are usually above height 1 anyway. Things that are generally like monstrous infantry and heavy cavalry are the best targets for rock throwers. And of course, things that have high defense that you wouldn't normally want to just tangle with in close combat because it'd take too long to kill them. Ideal for things like wraiths that other units might struggle to kill off, especially other things that may get matched up against wraiths, like chaff units may end up fighting wraiths. So it's not an ideal situation for them. So being able to rock them off is very, very handy. And I would say that if rock lobbers became the new meta and everyone took rock lobbers, everyone took 3, I would say troops of wraiths would no longer be that good. I think the Wraith Regiment for Undead is really not used at all because it's a lot of points to add 4 nerve and 2 attacks. But that 4 nerve is actually a really big deal when you're talking about the effects of being hit by a rock, because obviously they can't be wavered. So before you can actually do anything before you can even roll the nerve check on Wraiths at nerve 16, then obviously you have to do 4 damage. And being at nerve 12, as they are for a troop, 1 damage is enough to be rolling. So it's a scary prospect when you've got anything at nerve 12, because as soon as a piece of damage comes in, you're at risk. Whereas when you go up to nerve 16, suddenly, if you can't be wavered, it's not that scary anymore. So I'm not going to say there's going to be a shift towards Wraith Regiments, because I still don't think it's worth it for the number of attacks they have. They only gain 2 attacks, which I don't think is enough. But I think rocks are a nice counter to them, especially with them being unable to fly 20 because they're shambling. So it matched up very nicely in this last game here. And of course you need good dice rolls with rock lobbers. If you roll average all day, then I still think they'll pay for themselves just about, as long as you don't get them killed foolishly by leaving them in a very vulnerable position or all right next to each other with nothing guarding them. If you're not silly like that, then I think paying 240 points to have those 3 rocks is a very, very, very worthy investment. War Trombones, I'm not sure if I finished my point when I was saying that there's such a big difference between having 1 and 2 War Trombones, because when you only have 1, it's something that the enemy will target, and they don't have to put that much into killing it, because it's a war machine. You could chase it down with an individual, triple your attacks, and get rid of it in one go easily. When you have 2, suddenly, unless the enemy have multiple things going after war machines, then they struggle, because they can kill 1, but then there's still the other one to shoot them. So it makes a big difference in flyer defense and just all-round annoying unit defense, I found. The trolls, I always forget about the Brew of Courage. Maybe they would have survived a game or 2 over the course of my Goblin career when they actually had that upgrade, and when they should have survived, but they didn't, because I just forgot it was there and was just going by the nerve value that's written on. So what I might do, actually, when I have the Brew of Courage, I may actually just scribble out the 14-17 on the roster and exchange it for 15-18, so I'm more likely to remember. So that could be a good investment of ink there. So the army that won the tournament, if I just go back, was actually the army that defeated me, the Goblin list in game number 3, which I did tell you was a very, very good list. It had barely any artifacts in it, and I felt it was better equipped than my list because it had just killer units all over the board, and so many of them. We'll try and find a bit of a wide shot this game. He's got just countless trolls which are regenerating. So if I'd needed more rock lobber luck in this game. Out of all the games, I would have needed it in this game because he has life leech on units, he has regen on units. That's the list where you need to kill things fast with the rock lobbers, and if they don't die, their wounds will slowly come back. So this is the one game out of them all where the rock lobbers possibly needed to perform better, but it's the weakest game they had. So obviously you leave yourself in the hands of the dice gods when you take anything that hits on a 5+, because there will be games like if you saw my analysis of Fools of War when I was against Abyssal Dwarves and they had 3 mortars and none of them hit all game out of about 20 shots, every single one missed. So you will have games like that from time to time just by virtue of hitting on 5s. Sometimes they won't hit anything during the entire game, and sometimes they'll do nothing. Sometimes they'll hit and then you'll roll a 1 for the number of wounds and they won't do much at all. But on average, I think they do definitely enough to warrant their inclusion. And I would recommend Goblin players out there, give them a try. Take at least 2, I would say. Unless your list is really built away from taking shooter units, like this list was that I was against here. Only really the War Trombones, but they advance with the army. And then they just take out what's left. Let's see. John Gunn says, how come your rock lobbers destroyed my army while only tickling Dom's gobs? Yes, John is the person I was against in round number 1 when I virtually took out his entire army with rock lobbers, and then in this game barely did a scratch. That's just how it goes over the course of a tournament with such a random unit, like I said, hitting on 5s. Some games they'll demolish face with 3 of them. Some games they'll do nothing. On average, they'll do a fair bit. They'll still do enough. For 240 points, if you think of a giant as 190 points, I don't think I've seen a giant dish out enough damage to warrant that price tag during a game, generally. But rock lobbers definitely do. If someone said to you, okay, I've got 2,000 points, you're only going to have... You've got a 2,000 point army, but then we'll take off 240 of your points. So you've only got 1,760 points to play with. Would you feel like you were automatically going to lose the game? I would say no. You would still feel right in it at that stage. And that's the investment you're making for those rock lobbers. So even if they hit absolutely nothing, you're still not that far down on points. And the enemy's still going to probably try to kill them. So they're using their resources to chase after them. So you're not really that far down on points if you think about it, even if they hit nothing. So I would say definitely worth it. War Trombones, definitely worth it. Trolls, definitely worth it. And next time I'll try and factor in some more beasts, I would say. That's the main change I want to make. The third Troll Horde is a tasty one as well. I know there have been some armies run across the world that have 6 Troll Hordes in an army, which sounds ridiculously tasty, but I don't think I would actually get that many trolls. I do like to have a little bit of balance in my army, so I don't think I would go quite that far. I do want to get another box, though, because then I can make the second regiment of trolls, which I'll add on to the third horde that I've started, but I've only got half of it. So I'll have 3 hordes, and then I'll have 1 troll left over. So I could convert another Bruiser out of that, because I do like Bruisers. I know some people don't seem to take them, but I think they do enough. I think they reliably put out 4 or 5 damage. And of course, they're inspiring all the trolls around them. And they're pretty tough to crack as well. Defense 5, nerve 12, 15. Pretty good all round. But being nimble as well, you can use them to sneak through the lines. Let's see, Bill Harvat says 5 plus 1 shot is incredibly inconsistent, still worth the points. Yes, that's the gist of it. Occasionally they'll let you down, but overall they'll probably do enough, and they're worth the inclusion. If anyone wants to get in any more comments before I wrap this one up, then drop it in the chat right now, because I'm going to end this right now, because it's nearly time for food, I think, looking at the clock. And we've been going about 2 hours, which is about the average for these things now. I'm sure they only used to take an hour for my breakdowns. I think I take more in-depth pictures now. Let's see. Bill again says, Travis used a list with 5-6 troll hordes here in the States, took best general at Lady of the Lake GT. His other list has the rock lobbers, both are top tier. Yes. Goblin rock lobbers particularly are among the best, I think. The undead one is a particularly weak catapult, although it fills a slightly different role, because undead don't have a huge amount of shooting, unlike goblins. The undead catapult is only piercing 2, but it does have vicious. So I suppose that almost balances out, but it's more expensive as well. So the undead one, I'm not a big fan of. I've taken it before, but it hasn't done much. The goblin one, it's cheaper, and especially when you're taking multiples, those points add up. So the goblin one's really good. The abyssal dwarf, whatever it's called, the mortar, I think it's called, for them is good, because that also has vicious, but that has piercing 3 or 4, I think. So that's a really powerful one. I think that's more expensive than the goblin rock thrower, though. So that's another one that I rate highly. The dwarf bombard, you don't see too much of that, because dwarfs have a lot of other shooting options at their disposal, like the organ guns that are seen as top tier. In dwarf terms, dwarves aren't seen as top tier at all, generally, by most people. But the bombard is an interesting one, because it can fire indirectly, but then where the rock lobbers and things of that nature usually fall down is when you get within 12 inches of them, they can't shoot you anymore, because they can only fire indirect. But the dwarf bombard, I think, has the option to shoot a regular shot as well. So even if you get within 12 of that, it can still hurt you. But generally, if you've got within 12 of the catapults anyway, you're about to kill them. But I think that's a pretty good one as well. I can't remember which other armies have catapults now. There are other armies that have similar long-range war machines. I think the Ratkin have quite a few decent ones. But overall, I would say catapults that fire indirect, ignoring cover, because cover is such a big deal, especially if you look at this tournament, for instance. There's huge amount of terrain that you can be sitting in. There's forests everywhere, difficult terrain all across the table. So, and of course, people lining up their units behind each other. Being able to ignore cover is a really big deal, and still hit on 5s. And you can still hit individuals on 6s, which when you're firing multiples, if that's your only target, it's still viable. So definitely tasty, and I would expect if people are learning from my battle and tournament reports, as I assume they are, because I'm of course a premier wargamer in all respects, then I think catapults will become the new meta now. So you can thank me for that when your infantry and your cavalry gets blown to pieces with catapults at the next tournaments. You can definitely thank me for it if I'm the one delivering the rocks, but I think you can thank me anyway, because we all know how wide my sphere of influence is cast, and it is very wide indeed. Okay, it's time to wrap this one up, folks. Last minute comments coming in. We've got 15 viewers. Anyone has anything else to say? In fact, let's find the shot of the rock lobbers when they first unleashed their dominance. There we go. That first turn where all three of them hit in game, I think it was all three, may have been two, possibly all three though, in game one, instantly wavering a powerful unit by doing a ton of damage. That's what rock lobbers can do for you, folks. I'll give you about 10 more seconds if anyone wants to get another comment in before I end the broadcast. So just in case you didn't catch the beginning, this was at Black Dragon Miniatures in Hinckley, which is a very spacious and luxurious shop. They have all the miniature ranges you would expect in there from all the different companies. Very reasonable prices, very nice atmosphere, clean toilet facilities, and yeah, so if you're in the kind of Leicester area, there's definitely a place to look at. They seem to have quite nice gaming nights, if their Facebook page is anything to go by. John says it was all three. So yes, in turn one, it was all three that hit. So I think only two of them hit this unit, though. The other one hit, let's see if I can find that. Yeah, that one did 6 to the Elohai, didn't they? Which basically crippled them for the game as well. So, yep, rock lobbers, first game of a tournament, all three of them hit in turn one. That just gave me a clue they were going to have a good day, I think. And I was feeling good about them after that. And that positive energy transferred into the dice rolls, and they just rolled 5s and 6s unerringly. John says, what about my shirt? I actually talked about your shirt already, which was the final picture, which I got to, and then discussed that at great length, the fashion of people at these events. So you must have missed that. So you can probably wind back on the old YouTubes and watch that analysis of your shirt. And anyone that wants to wear a nice bright shirt at events from now on, if I'm attending and I see you and it's not a shirt that I wouldn't want to be in a picture with, then I'll take your picture and then I'll give you all the publicity that you rightfully deserve for brightening up what is normally a dreary and very, very dark grey hobby. Fashion-wise, at least. The personalities are more colourful, but it'd be nice if the fashion started to match the colourful personalities that we get at these events. That's all I'm saying. Less black t-shirts, more neon green, pinks, oranges, yellows, bright blue. That's all I'm asking. It's not that much to ask, is it really? So there we go. Time to wrap this one up, though. Folks, thanks for watching, everyone that's been here the whole time. We've had at least 10 viewers for the majority of this, which is nice for a very long stream like this, and I'm sure plenty of people will be watching afterwards, going over each one of the moves during the games and picking out any tactical masterclasses or tactical blunders. There were quite a few. Tactically, in this tournament, I don't think I made too many horrendous errors. It was mainly just forgetfulness in a couple of moments, forgetting to move units and forgetting to make sure certain units were in range of each other. Those are the major mistakes that I spotted. If you've seen anything else, let me know in the permanent comments after the stream finishes going live, should I say? Finishes being live. And any other compliments of my opponents or their armies, feel free to drop them in as well. And with that, I think it's time to say good night out there, whatever you are.